As President Trump's advisors try to sell Putin on the peace plan, many in the West are still reflecting on the original draft that was leaked. Critics called it pro-Russia, and Ukrainians were outraged. Let's go to Emma Withrow from the fact-check team. And I understand that that plan was just a draft, but break down some of the main points of this, because Trump has certainly had shifts with regard to Ukraine and territory.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, it was just a draft. They're going to be continuing these negotiations as the days go on. Secretary Marco Rubio called it a living, breathing document, so changes are bound to be made. But just for starters, the big headlines of this draft are number one being territory. So Ukraine would have to accept Russia's control of Crimea, Luhansk, and all of Donetsk, and then also freeze the front lines in the south. Next one is military and NATO. Ukraine's army would be capped at 600,000, and it would also have to put in its constitution that it would never join NATO. Also, there was the security guarantees aspect of all of this. The U.S. offered reliable guarantees, but analysts say they're a bit vague on that point. So those were kind of the main portions of it that stuck out to me.
Right. And another layer of this, from my understanding, the U.S. could benefit monetarily from this plan, right?
Yeah, that's been a big point of contention, especially among critics. So under that 28-point plan, about $100 billion in frozen Russian assets would get used for rebuilding Ukraine. And then the U.S. would get, 50% of the profit. So they would get a cut of all of that. The remaining Russian funds would also go into a U.S.-Russia investment vehicle for rebuilding. And analysts with the Center for Strategic Studies say that this has been highly criticized because it seems like the U.S. is kind of getting a bigger piece of the pie than maybe they should be.
All right, Emma, thank you so much for that breakdown. And later on, Emma will join us to dig into the recent corruption controversy in Ukraine and how it could impact peace negotiations. As President Trump's advisors meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin to push forward on a peace plan, Ukraine is still reeling from a corruption scandal. Let's go to Emma Withrow from the fact-check team. To start things off, Emma, just tell us about the high-ranking officials that are facing these allegations.
Yeah, there's a long list of them that are involved in all of this. It's including, former deputy prime minister. All of these people have either been named or charged. Also, Zelensky's former business partner and others. They're all accused of embezzling $100 million of public funds that were specifically supposed to go towards Ukraine's energy sector. So Zelensky's former chief of staff, I guess you could say, who's the country's second most powerful person, he was allegedly involved, and he was, ended up publicly resigning the other day. Zelensky talked about it. So it's very, a large scope of people who are involved, it looks like.
And we should point out that Ukraine has been accused of corruption for years.
Yeah.
Some have raised concerns as we look at defense spending, of course, about billions of American taxpayer dollars to help their defense. What is the possible impact of this on peace negotiations?
So it's tough to predict exactly what could happen, but just as far as how this could damage, Ukraine's relationship with its allies is important to note. And it kind of goes entirely against the anti-corruption campaign pledges that Zelensky ran on and vowed to uphold when he was running for, president. It also gives the Kremlin a little bit more of an opportunity to point to Ukraine and say, see, they are corrupt. This has been said for a long time, which could weaken Ukraine's negotiating power. So lots of contributing factors, and we'll just have to see how it plays out in the coming weeks.
A lot of moving parts. We'll see how it comes together. Absolutely. Thanks. Emma, thank you so much. And for more on this fact-check team topic, including links to Emma's sources, scan the QR code or visit thenationaldesk.com.